Okay, so I'd like to welcome everybody to our Curious Minds virtual support program, as we're calling it. So this is the first in our series, and what we've got are a mix of talks by some of our awesome women in STEM, hopefully some virtual tours, some tips on presenting your project, and some more social events like time to choose an adventure for yourselves, just as we did before, and we'll be getting the staff back in to help with that. Okay, tonight though, we have Mary McMillan. So Mary is a senior lecturer in biomedical science in the School of Science and Technology at the University of New England. Mary's going to tell you a bit about her pathway, but I will tell you that she graduated from the University of New England with a Bachelor of Science with honours, and then she went on to complete a PhD. Her research interests are in human genetics and molecular biology. And she also has a passion for science communication and outreach activities. Now, Mary may not tell you, but she was named one of the 12 STEM change makers by the Australian Academy of Science in 2020. And she's also a 2021 Superstar of STEM. And this is with Science and Technology Australia. Mary is also a Curious Minds coach. So she has quite a few hats to wear there. Now, I'm not going to say any more about Mary because she's going to tell you a bit about herself. So I might pass it over to Mary now. You ready, Mary?
I am. Thank you so much, Kelsey. Before I started my talk, I just wanted to quickly let you all know that I'm coming tonight from here in Armidale, which is land of the Anawan people. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and pay my respects to those people and all of the elders past, present and future. I'm going to share my screen with you if I just bear with me and make sure. I'm usually pretty good with this tech, but you know, the one time that now that's hopefully working, that everyone can see that. Okay, yep, awesome.
Great.
Beautiful. So thanks to Kelsey and her team for inviting me to be the first of your speakers in this series. It's very exciting and it's a big honor. I have called this talk Blood, Spit and a Few Tears, a career as a biomedical scientist. And I hope as we go through that'll kind of become clear maybe why I've named it like that. But the first thing that I wanted to do is, if I can get my slides to, there we go, is the first thing I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about my career path and how I actually got to doing all the things that Kelsey's kind of just outlined that I actually do at the moment. So I thought, well, let's start by talking about a career path and what that might have looked like for me, just as a bit of an example of what a career path in STEM could look like. When I was probably your age, I had a pretty clear idea of what I wanted to do when I grew up. I had decided that I was going to obviously finish high school. I was going to probably take a gap year, do something, have a little bit of time off. Then I was planning on heading straight to university to study vet science, and I was going to become a vet. So at age around 15 or 16, this was my life plan or my career path. I guess the message from this part of my talk is that it doesn't always go according to plan. So I did indeed finish high school, so we'll give that one a tick. And I was actually the first person in my family to successfully complete grade 12 at school. So that's a pretty well-earned tick, I think, that I'm giving myself there against finishing high school. I then did follow through with my plan and I took a gap year. I went on a Rotary Youth Exchange and I spent a year in very beautiful Canada. So that's me there skiing in the Canadian Rockies, which was an absolutely fantastic year. During that time, I kind of changed my mind actually about what I was going to study. And I decided I no longer wanted to study veterinary science, but instead I thought I might become a forensic scientist. And to do that, there was no forensic science degrees at the time. You did two kind of combined degrees, which was in science and in law. So while in my gap year, changed my mind about my career and decided to enroll in this degree and come to university. So I came here actually to the University of New England, where I now work, to study my science and law degree. And obviously that meant I was no longer going to be working as a vet. I would hopefully one day be working as a forensic scientist. As with many things in life, plans do change. And after a little while of studying, I decided I actually really didn't like law. Loved studying science, but thought law was kind of a little bit boring. So I decided I would quit the law part of my degree and just focus on studying science. I also decided I was probably not actually going to be a forensic scientist. In my first year of university, I had this amazing professor who came and taught us about DNA and genetics and all the things that our DNA can do and all the things that we can do with it. And I kind of was hooked and fell in love with that. So I thought, actually, instead of being a forensic scientist, what I might do is go into having some sort of research career, maybe work as a research assistant or something like that. But I wasn't really very sure. So I did finish my degree. And because I loved it so much, I decided not to get a job straight away. And I thought I would study a little bit more. So I stayed at university and did what we call an honours degree, which is like an extra year that you do, which is just research. So you're focusing on researching a particular topic and writing a little thesis. So I did that. And then I thought, after I've done that, I'll get a job. So did the honours degree. Turns out, one of the things that's very difficult if you live in a small city or town like I do is getting a job, particularly when you have a science degree but zero work experience. I'd never really had a job. So getting a job was a little bit tricky for me. But while I was hunting for a job, I actually came across an ad for a PhD scholarship. And I applied for it and was given this scholarship. And so I went to the CSIRO, actually still here in Armidale, to do a PhD. And I have to admit, I was a little bit naive. I didn't actually really know what a PhD was. So when I got given this scholarship, I was kind of madly Googling, what is a PhD? How do you do that? How do you actually become a doctor? Fortunately, I figured it out and I did graduate back in 2013 with my PhD. So this is me looking slightly different when I graduated with my doctorate. From there, I had to decide what I wanted to do next. I had kind of planned while I was doing my PhD that I would do the normal thing that most scientists do, which is after you finish your doctorate, you often go and do what we call a postdoc, which is like a first job that you might do after finishing a PhD. Once again, life had other plans for me other than going and doing a postdoc somewhere. And I actually ended up, instead of doing a postdoc and then becoming a researcher as I planned, I had this lovely little munchkin, which is my son. So after I finished my PhD, a couple of weeks later, I had a baby. So I took a little bit of time off to look after him. And he's now 8, but at the time he was, just this gorgeous little baby that I wanted to take a little bit of time away from work to look after. And when he was around 6 months old, I was very fortunate in that the university here contacted me and said, hey, would you like a job? And I said, yeah, that would be awesome. So they actually offered me a job as a lecturer and researcher here. And so I came and started working here at UNE in 2013, just after Hamish was about 6 months old. And I've been here ever since. So that's kind of my career story with a few twists and turns along the way. I do have one more little bit, which is kind of a question mark of what actually happens next. Where am I going after this? Because I don't think our stories are ever finished. So at the moment, this is where I am and this is what I'm doing, but who knows what the future holds. So yeah, a little bit of a twist and turn and a few mind changes along the way, but that's how basically I got to where I am now. And then I thought what I'd tell you a little bit about is what I actually do now as a job, what I love about it. And because I've been fortunate enough to be given this platform to talk to you, I thought I might share a few little lessons that I've learned along the way that might be maybe useful for you. So what do I actually do as a biomedical science, aside from posing for lovely photos like this one in the lab? What does my job actually look like? Because I work at a university, my job has 3 main parts to it. One of those parts is obviously teaching. So I teach our next generation of scientists in biomedical science. I teach some medical students as well. So I do a fair bit of teaching. And I do some research, and then I get to do what we call a service component, which is sitting on committees and doing fun stuff like being involved with Curious Minds. The research that I do as a biomedical scientist is trying to understand a little bit more about mental health disorders. So I work with a research group that's called the Brain Behavior Research Group, and we focus on trying to understand why some people have certain mental health conditions, mostly talking about depression. So we know that, depression is a huge problem, and a lot of people experience it at some point in their life, but we want to know, like, why is that actually happening? And for me, as a molecular biologist and as a geneticist, I'm really interested in understanding whether there's certain changes and variations within our DNA that mean that we're more likely to get depression than other people. And the other thing I'm really interested in is, one day, could we potentially have a blood test that could help us to diagnose mental health conditions and choose the best treatments for them, just like we do with other illnesses. If you've got cancer or diabetes or any other sort of illness, we do a lot of blood testing. We try and figure out what's actually going on in your body so that we can fix it. So hopefully one day we might be able to do the same thing with mental health disorders. So what does that actually look like? If that's my day-to-day job, what does that actually look like? I spend a lot of time here at the lab bench playing with other people's blood and spit, which is where the title for this talk came from. So these here are actually some serum samples that I've had collected from some participants. These are mouthwash and saliva samples that they send me. And I get to do a lot of things like making pretty pictures like this gel, which shows some DNA, and we can look at some differences in that DNA between different people. So I work with a lot of study participants who volunteered for our research. They volunteered to give us some information about themselves and volunteered to give us these types of samples. And so now I can use these to look at things like our DNA and see if there are certain variations in DNA that appear more often in people who have depression compared to people who don't. And so that leads us into understanding a little bit more about the kind of the biology behind these disorders. So that's what I do in a nutshell. But yes, I do usually wear a lab coat in the lab. I should probably point that out. This is a bad photo to show you because I'm not wearing all my PPE like I should be. That's very naughty. So what do I actually love about doing this job? One of the things I love about it is the variety. So I do really enjoy that I get to do teaching and research and lots of other fun outreach type things where I'm working maybe with groups of school kids or going out into the community and talking to community groups about science, writing articles for newspapers, all sorts of fun things. So there's a lot of variety in what I do. So a few of the things that I love the most are the idea that we can really solve problems and help people. Through my previous studies, when I was doing my honours and when I was doing my PhD, I was working with different organisms. I was working initially with fungi and then with cattle, and now I work with people. And I really love working with people because there's such a feeling that you can really actually make a difference in a lot of lives. I've put up here on this picture a little bit of information about mental health disorders from Beyond Blue. And you can see how common they are. As many as 1 in 5 people might experience something like depression. So there's a huge number of people being affected. And the research that I do has this real potential to help so many people. And that's a really rewarding part of your job, to think, that what you're doing, trying to solve these problems, could really help a lot of people. The tears part of my talk, I guess, comes in at the same part, because when you're trying to solve problems and you're trying to design experiments and do a lot of experimental work, it doesn't always work and you have a lot of failure. So there are a few tears along the way when you have a career doing a lot of research, because you do fail a lot. So that's the tears part of my title. Another thing that I really love is that my job allows me to really share my passion for science. I just think the world around us is so fascinating, and I love reading stories about scientific discoveries and the type of research that people are doing and all the things they're finding out. And I get to share that. I get to share that with, these are some of my students here in one of our labs at the university, doing some neuroscience and understanding a little bit more about how the brain works. So I love that I get to share my passion with my students, but I also get to share that passion with a wider audience. So I write a newspaper column every fortnight that goes to like 170 or something different newspapers across the country. And I get to tell cool science stories through that column. And that is, for me, really exciting. And a huge thing for me in science has been the ability that it's given me to travel and to just work with some really amazing people. I grew up in Mudgee, small country town. I was not from a particularly well-off family. We didn't travel. We didn't go overseas for holidays. We barely left the town for holidays. So having a career as a scientist, I get to go to conferences all over the place. I've got to take study tours of students to different countries to learn about biomedical science and how it works in other places. This is actually a picture of me in Antarctica, of all places. And that was for part of a leadership program for women in STEM that I was really fortunate to be a part of back in 2019. Without having picked this career, I don't think I would have had those opportunities to travel and have those experiences. And over here, this is a very few of the women that I'm getting to work with as part of the program that Kelsey mentioned earlier, which is the Superstars of STEM program that I'm really excited to be a part of this year, because I get to meet all of these other women in STEM and be inspired by them. So a huge plus for me in the job that I do is just getting that experience of working with so many different people in different places. And the last thing that I kind of wanted to share with you as part of my talk tonight is a few lessons that I've learned along the way. And these are, I've limited myself to 5 because otherwise I could talk all night, and I know that there might be some questions that people want to ask, so I don't want to do that. I've limited myself to 5 lessons, and these are things that I've kind of learned along the way, and they apply not just to having a career in science, but they apply to really anything that you want to do in life. It's not just relevant for science, it's relevant for all sorts of things. So my first lesson is, it really doesn't matter if you know right now what you want to do when you grow up. I remember being a teenager and dreading that question of like, what are you going to be when you grow up? You get asked that all the time, and I'm sure that you all experience that a lot. We don't necessarily always know where we're going and what we're going to do. And it's quite okay to not be really that sure now. And it's quite okay to change your mind. If you think back to my career pathway, I changed my mind at various points along the way as to what I wanted to be when I grow up. I'm still not actually sure what I'm going to be when I grow up. If I ever grow up, I'll let you know. But, you know, I'm still exploring new things and deciding what I might want to do next. And that's totally okay. So when you don't have an answer to that question, don't stress about it right now. You've got heaps of time to figure out what you're passionate about and what you might enjoy doing. So you don't have to have all the answers at age 15 or 16. My second lesson is do what you enjoy, even if you're not very good at it. When it comes to science and to STEM, I hear so many people go, oh, I could never be a scientist because I wasn't good at maths, or I could never be a scientist because I don't like dissecting things. You know, it doesn't matter if you're the best at something or not. Just follow the thing that you enjoy. I would not say I'm the world's greatest scientist. Like, I do all right. You know, I'm pretty good at doing an experiment in the lab and writing some papers and things, but I'm certainly not winning a Nobel Prize anytime soon. But I enjoy it. I love what I do, and I'm going to do it even if I'm not the best person at it. And that's not just to do with careers. I'm also a terrible runner, but I do that anyway. I'm an absolutely terrible drawer, but I recently started a YouTube channel where I very badly draw science things. So, you know, find the things that you like doing and do them anyway, even if you're not very good at them, because life's too short to just do what other people think you should do, or just do the things that you are maybe super good at. And you don't have to be a genius to be a scientist. So if you enjoy doing science and exploring things, then do it anyway, even if you're not, you know, a grade A student necessarily, you're not necessarily the best at it. You can do it anyway. Lesson number 3, this one needs a disclaimer, I think. So my lesson number 3 is when other people tell you no, do it anyway. I'm not talking about when it comes to like legal things. I'm not encouraging you to break the law, but what I'm encouraging you to do is to think about what actually matters to you and what you want to achieve, and not let other people put their limits on you. If I had $1 for every time someone had told me, no, that's not the way we do things, or no, you shouldn't do it that way, or no, that's probably not the right thing for you to do, I'd probably be sitting in a mansion somewhere with my giant piles of money. You know, usually when other people are telling you you can't do things, they're actually more reflective of their own limitations rather than necessarily your limitations. So when it comes to the law, definitely do what it says. But when it comes to people telling you that maybe, oh no, I don't think you should be a scientist, or I don't think you should do that, or I don't think that's the career for you, you know, if it's what you want to do, follow it anyway. Yours is really the opinion that matters the most. This one I think is really important. If there's one thing I can encourage you to do, it's to be really open to exploring and trying new things, even if those things are a bit scary. And this is probably the wrong group to be telling this to, because obviously you have already taken a leap and jumped into something that's a bit scary. You've all put your hands up to be part of this Curious Minds program and explore new things and try new things. And I know at least one of my students is here tonight that I'm coaching. And I've said to these girls before, like at age 15 or 16, there is probably like no chance that I would have been a part of this program, because I would have been too scared. I would have been too shy and scared to meet a complete stranger and talk to them about careers and all of these kind of things. So I am so hugely impressed that you have even put your hand up to do this program in the first place, and that you're taking these kind of opportunities. So keep doing that. Keep doing that all the way through your lives. Keep trying to do new things and explore new things. That's how you find out what you really love doing. And I can tell you already that the only things I kind of regret at the moment are things that I didn't do, or things that I didn't try. I don't really have regrets about the things that I have done. So even when things are a little bit scary, put your hand up and jump in. That's how I ended up on a ship with 80 other women in Antarctica, is because I was brave enough to put my hand up for something, even though it was a bit scary. So that's like one of my biggest things that I could always tell people, is just try new stuff and explore all the time. And this is the final lesson that I wanted to share with you. And this is a lesson I'm still kind of learning myself. It's don't be afraid to ask for help along the way. Again, you've already made an awesome start on this, because you're already part of this program. You're already talking to people that can be mentors for you, and you're talking to each other and, you know, building that support network. I haven't always been particularly good at asking for help or asking for advice. So I'm trying to learn to do this a little bit more, because you don't always have to struggle through on your own. There are support networks out there to help you, whether that's with advice about subjects at school, or advice about careers, or, you know, anything else in your life. There are always people to turn to. So don't be like me. I'll be the cautionary tale. Don't be like me and be afraid to reach out to people. You know, if you need something or you want something, try and figure out who can help you, and don't be afraid to reach out to those people to ask. So I think I have talked for 20 minutes now. So that is kind of what I wanted to tell you. A little bit about how I got to where I am at the moment, a little bit about my job, what I love about it, what it involves, and hopefully a few lessons that you might find useful at some point in your lives, or not. You can forget those 5 lessons if you don't think they're very useful for you. I'm going to put this one up too, because I am always really happy to have a chat to anybody who wants to talk about careers in science and biomedical science and all sorts of other things. When I say reach out and ask for help, I actually do legitimately mean that. You know, I hope that I can be somebody who people can turn to maybe for some advice or support if they need it. I, growing up, never had or never knew a scientist or really had anyone to talk to about careers and things like that. And so one of the things I love doing now is actually helping out other people in the same position who might not have a family that's very, like my family is lovely, but just didn't know about university or studying science and all of these kind of things. So, you know, if you're in a similar situation, you can add me to your list of people that that you can reach out to ask for some help or advice. And I guess that's me done. I'm going to stop sharing this screen, and I guess that's worked. Okay. And Kelsey, I guess we'll open up and let anyone ask any questions that they want to.
Yes. Oh, get my video going.
That's easy.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd just like to start by thanking you. A fantastic talk. I can relate to so much of it. And I'll let you know you never do grow up, and you never do stop changing what you might do or where you think you're going. I thought I'd retired, and now I'm doing Curious Minds. So you just keep doing different things. So.
And it's those things that you love, right? You find a thing that you're passionate about, so you just follow it along. And
and it's wonderful. So yeah. So thank you very much for that. It's a little bit hard for everybody to clap as a thank you because they're all muted. But what we'll do now is we will open it up to questions. And I thought what we could do for question time is we could either put the questions in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute, are you able to unmute yourselves? Well, they won't be able to tell me.
Yes.
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 Okay. So if you would like to ask Mary a question, you could do that live. You can even put your camera on at this stage if you'd like. You don't have to, or you can pop something in the chat. Okay, we do have a question. It is, what would you recommend doing to help figure out what you are passionate about?
That's a really good question. I think it comes back to that idea of trying different things and exploring different things, because you never know whether you enjoy something or not until you have a go at it. I came to university as a student to study what I thought was going to be for a career in forensic science. And it wasn't till I just had that first lecture from, this professor around, DNA that I was like, oh, actually, that just makes so much sense to me. And I want to find out more about that. So I think it's, just being open to trying different things. That's the key, because if you try enough things, you will eventually find something that you just go, oh, wow, I really want to do that, or I really want to know more about that. And I was talking to a student that I've been coaching, and we were talking about her project, and she started to tell me about some of the things that she had learnt. And as she was talking about it, I could see her face light up. Her face changed and her eyes lit up. And I think, you've found something that you're really passionate about when talking about it does that to you, when talking about it, makes you excited. So keep trying all the different things, and the more things you try, you'll definitely find something that you really love.
Yeah, great advice. Now
I've got my chat here. Do you want me to just keep working through them?
Sure.
I can do that if you like. Cool. Yeah. So the next question is a great question about subjects and courses and that sort of thing, and how, what high school subjects that I took and university courses did I take to get to my current position. So I did study science at high school. I actually studied physics and chemistry. So I'm a biologist now. Biology is the one science that I did not take at high school. I can't really remember the reasons for that now, but I took physics and chemistry. I did English. I did 3-unit maths. And I don't even like maths, but I did 3-unit maths for some reason. And I also did business studies at school, just for in my HSC, just for I don't know why. It seemed like a good idea at the time. I didn't have very good advice about what I was doing. so those are the subjects that I did at school. University, I originally was going to apply for vet science as a degree, but I did change my mind, as I said, and I ended up applying for that degree in science and law. The courses that I looked at, something like vet science has a really high ATAR. It was, I think, like 90, high 90s. So it was going to be competitive to get into, but other courses like a Bachelor of Science in a lot of places, and I enrolled in a double degree in science and law, have a much lower ATAR. The other thing that I did, which I think is a smart thing to do as you come up and do things like finishing school, is I applied to university on what's called an early entry scheme. And that is like a way that you can apply to university and actually get in before you even have your HSC results. So the university that I work at, we have one of those schemes. A lot of universities across the country have similar kind of things. And it's usually based on your school principal writing a report and recommending you. Sometimes they look at maybe year 11 results. So I actually had an offer to university before I even had my HSC results, because I went through that. And I really recommend doing that just as a backup plan when you get to that point. To get to the position I'm in now, where I'm an academic at a university and doing this teaching and research, I had to do more study than just a bachelor degree. So a bachelor degree is your normal kind of 3-year degree that you do at university, but I had to go on and do more study than that to get where I am. So I actually spent a grand total of 10 years at university doing all of my degrees. Actually 10 and a half, because I went back to study last year and did another short course. So I don't necessarily recommend spending 10 years at university. But yeah, there's a lot of different options in terms of courses. And I really recommend you discussing that with your coaches in this program, what kind of subjects to choose and what kind of courses you might go into. So hopefully, Emma, that answers your question for you. Chio's asked a great question. Hi, Chio. Chio lives in Armidale, I think. Sorry, I shouldn't probably say that, should I, when you're recording? I'm sorry, Kelsey. What qualities do I think are most important to have? Oh, I think in the line of work that I'm in, some of the most important qualities that I have are being curious. So if you're going to be a scientist or do something like what I do, you kind of need to have a curiosity about the way things work. You need to be reasonably organized, because you kind of have to think logically to design experiments and think about how you're going to solve a problem. So you're going to have a little bit of logic to you. Determination, I think, would be a big one. And another one would be resilience. Like I said earlier, you fail a lot. Like, you have experiments that fail all the time. Things just don't quite go to plan. So you have to be able to have enough resilience that when something goes wrong, that you don't just fall in a heap. You've got to be able to pick yourself up again, troubleshoot, think your way through things, and try again. So maybe I think those are some of the most important qualities. Gemma's asked, would I recommend going on a Rotary exchange or something similar? Yeah, I would. I absolutely loved my exchange year. I was actually, next year will be 20 years since I did my exchange. So that's going on a little while now. And actually on the weekend, I was talking to 2 people that I had met in my year in Canada. So I still have those connections with people that I met on that exchange year. So it was really a great experience. And for a lot of people, I think taking a gap between finishing high school and going into university can be a good thing, just because it gives you a little bit more time to think about what you might want to do, some time to transition out of school and into more adulthood, I guess. So I think a gap year can be a good thing. So that kind of answers another question that was in the chat as well from Kate about would I recommend taking a gap year. If you can, I mean, not everyone's in a position to be able to do that. Some people just, need to, if they're going to study, get straight into it. But if you've got some space and time to do that, then yeah, I think, why not? explore. It's come back to exploring again. That gives you this chance to explore. Lily has asked, was it difficult to quit the law section of my degree? No. Short answer is absolutely not. I really wasn't enjoying it that much. I enjoyed some subjects. I loved, you know what I loved learning about was criminal law, but other things I found really boring. I did not like learning about the Constitution and intellectual property and things like that. So I had done once I'd had the experience of doing some lab work and being in the lab doing research, there was no way I was finishing that law degree. It was not the thing for me. It was not the thing I was passionate about and not the thing that I enjoyed doing. So I quit and followed the thing that I did enjoy. So that wasn't difficult at all. I'll do it again in a heartbeat. V has asked about my YouTube channel. I shouldn't tell you. No, I don't want to share that. It's called Badly Drawn Science because it's badly drawn science. I haven't put anything up in a while, but yeah, Badly Drawn Science is it. Megan's asked, what's it like going through uni not being sure of which career you're going to get into after graduating? I think from my experience here teaching and coordinating courses and working with a lot of students, I would say there are very few students who actually go through their entire university degree knowing exactly where they're going to and what they're going to do when they finish. I think most people start having a vague idea of the area that you might want to work in. And then once you get into really specialized subjects in the sort of second and third year of university, I think that's when people really figure out maybe more what they want to do. So I don't think that it's unusual to go through university not really knowing exactly what career you're going to do after graduating. It does depend on what you're studying though. Like we have a degree here in pharmacy. People who study pharmacy go and become pharmacists. That's pretty much what most of them do with that degree. So they probably know what career they're going into, but somebody who might be doing a Bachelor of Science, there's so many different options that they might not know right away what they're going to do. And that's okay. I think you explore that and you find your way as you go. So I don't think it's that hard. I think it's what everyone does, to be honest, to some extent at least. Let's see, where am I up to? Sorry, I scrolled. Let me scroll back through my chat. Okay. How hard would it be to work and go to university at the same time, Jordan? Pretty tough. But if you're an organized person and you're determined that you're doing that you want to do both, then it's very doable. I have a lot of students who study part-time and work part-time, or work full-time and study part-time. Last year, I did another university qualification. I was working full-time and studying full-time, and that was probably a bad idea. So I wouldn't recommend doing both full-time, but it's absolutely doable to have a job and to study at the same time. And a lot of people do that. That's how they manage to put themselves through university. So as long as you're organized and realistic about what you can achieve, then you can definitely do that. So he has asked about, sorry, I'm just going through these really quickly now. So he has asked about work experience. Is that really important to future careers in uni? I think it is. I think work experience is another opportunity to explore a career and get a taste of it. I did work experience at a vet. So I tried out that career and I kind of went, and actually that was part of why I changed my mind about what I wanted to do as well, because I was kind of like, yeah, this is all right, but I'm not sure that I can see myself doing this as an actual career. So work experience is a great opportunity to explore. And if you do go to university and then you want to get a nice job when you're done, having some work experience along the way can really help with that. So it's a good chance to explore, and it really does help set you up for a job afterwards. So yeah, work experience is pretty important. We actually, for some of our degrees, build work experience into it. So you actually do it as part of your degree as well. And that's a really good way to get some more experience. All right, where are we up to? Tabitha. Oh gosh, I scrolled too fast. Yes, here we go. Okay, do I think just developing good study habits early on is helpful? And how do you recommend to study more and retain more information? Wow, we could do, I reckon, a whole talk just on study skills and how to help remember stuff. Yes, I think developing good study habits early on is really important. Going to be honest with you, I was not the best at studying when I was at school. I did well at school. I found it actually quite easy. So I didn't really study a lot. And then when I got to university, that was hard because I hadn't actually developed a good study skills at school. So then when I got to uni, I was like, oh no, I actually have to work now. And I had to learn those skills a little bit later. How do I recommend people study? I guess to talk about it really briefly, the more active you can be in your study, the better. So just reading something in a book, you're only going to retain a small part of that. But if you're creating something, maybe you're like, drawing out flow charts and diagrams and things, that's probably going to help you retain a little bit more. One of the best ways to test yourself and to make sure you know what you're talking about is actually to try and teach somebody else or tell somebody else. This is what I always get my students to do. I get them to teach each other. I never learned as much as when I started teaching. When I actually had to stand in front of a class of students and teach them things, I figured out all the things I didn't really know that well, because that's like the ultimate test. So what I always want my students to do now is to teach other people. I say, if you've got somebody at home who will listen, talk to them. If you've got nobody at home who will listen, talk to your dog, because dogs are awesome and they will listen to you talk about anything. Cats aren't great. They tend to just wander off. But, telling people, practicing explaining things, saying it out loud, you're being really active in what you're doing. And that's going to help you as well. So practicing like answering questions and problems, that's a really good way to do things. So I find that the students who just read and write notes, it's good, but the more active sort of stuff you can do in your study, the more you tend to recall. And yeah, so that's kind of my, in a nutshell, tips on studying. And that probably answers a little bit of Prisha's question too. Could we suggest some ways to be productive and learn more? It's about getting actively involved in what you're doing. And I'm not the best person, honestly, to give advice about like time management and stuff, because I still leave everything to the last minute. I still do everything right before deadlines are due. I may have been finishing off my slides at 7:30 tonight. But one way to be more productive is to not be like me and actually get yourself organized, set aside some time, make yourself a calendar where you do set aside some time for separate tasks and revision and space to learn. But do what I do, not what I say in that scenario, I think. Kelsey's going to be like, get off, Mary, you're telling them all sorts of terrible things. Where are we up to? Gia or Jaya, sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Your internet cut out and you missed the thing that I said that was really helpful to get offers before you finished or before you get your HSC results are called early entry programs that most universities will have. They may call them a principal's recommendation scheme or something along those lines, but most universities have those. Okay, we're nearly towards the end of these, which is good. How do we decide which uni is the best option, especially if many of them offer similar courses? Number one thing that you should do if you're considering some different universities is go and visit them. Go and visit. Last year was a little bit different because most universities couldn't have an open day, but nearly every year, nearly every university across the country will have what's called an open day. And that is a chance for prospective students to come and visit the campus, talk to academic advisors, tour the facilities, learn about things like all the extracurricular stuff, like what sort of clubs there are and societies, what sort of activities you can get involved in. So biggest thing is if you are looking at a particular course and you can see it's offered in a few different places, go and have a visit. And even if you can't go to an open day, most universities will have a future students type team that you can contact, and they will take you maybe on a tour if you get in touch with them. I know we do that here. People can just get in touch with the team anytime and say, I would like to come and have a tour, and they organize that. But yeah, that's what I think would be the most helpful thing to do, is just, yeah, go and see. And when you're there, you can usually talk to some current students. So you can kind of get their idea of like, is this a cool place to study? Is it a good course? You can often talk to people who are doing it, and that's really good. Next best thing, if you can't go and actually visit, there are various kind of like online forums that you can probably find by doing a bit of Google searching, where people are chatting about different universities and their courses and their experiences. So if you can't physically get to an open day or campuses, maybe the university you're considering is way too far away from where you live. There are like online tours sometimes, and yeah, those kind of discussion forums that you can check out as well. So yeah. And the last question that we've got here from Gemma: with early entry, do you have to know the course you want to do? Yeah, you do. Yeah, you have to know what course you want to apply for. Usually, the good thing is though, it's just like when you apply to university at the end of school, you do get to put down a few options. You don't just have to put down one. You can put down some preferences and say, I think I'd like to do this one, but maybe I also would like this one or this one. So if you don't get into the first one, they might offer you entry into the second one. So, and you can change those preferences usually from time to time if you change your mind between first applying and then deciding what you want to do later. I think these days universities are getting a lot more flexible with entry and with changing your mind between courses. So the best thing again to do is like ask for help. If you're not sure what you're doing, just be brave, pick up the phone and call them, because there's always somebody on the other end of that phone who can sort you out, answer all your questions, and yeah, set you on the right track. So you just got to be brave enough to like pick up the phone and say, this is what I'm thinking, can you help me? Sophie's asked another question about that early entry type thing as well. Can you still do a gap year, or do you have to start straight away? It really varies from university to university. So I don't have a blanket answer for that one. Some universities say you have to come straight away. Others say, yep, you're accepted, come whenever you like. Take some time off if you want. So that one's a bit more of a vary by university type thing. Whew, that's good.
Great, thank you, Mary. And I'm thinking also in the current climate, universities are probably going to be more accommodating of people wanting to come in, because they're missing a lot of international students and will be looking for domestic students. So it's a good time to be maybe going for an early entry into a university.
Yeah, and it's changing, you know, universities and the way we do education is constantly changing. I think by the time all of you are graduating from school, I think it will be probably slightly different to what it is now, just with the changes to funding and all sorts of stuff that you all don't need to understand. But yeah, it does change. So just as you start to think about things, just jump on Google, do all the searching, you'll find heaps of info. And if you've got a good careers advisor at school, chat to them as well, because they know all the things about university. That's their job.
Right. Okay. We've got just one last question popped up there. How early can you apply?
Yeah, everyone loves this idea of early entry into uni, don't they?
Get in straight away.
You apply in year 12. So you do apply in year 12. They're usually around mid-year, maybe a little bit earlier. And you often you could get an offer in something like November before you've got, you know, that HSC result has come out. So yeah, you wait till year 12, but you apply then.
Okay, I think everybody's keen to get to university and start on the next phase of their career.
Everyone just wants to come and take cool pictures in science labs, like all my pictures.
Yeah, go to Antarctica.
Yeah. I can't promise you if you become a scientist that you get to go to Antarctica.
No, but you never know. I've spent about 8 months on research vessels, so you get to go to cool places and things. So
yeah, look, growing up in regional New South Wales on a small farm, I would never in a million years have imagined that would be a place that I would end up. So you'd never know where you're going to go.
Yep. No, it's a wonderful career. So thank you again, Mary. That was fantastic. And thank you for answering all of those questions. So we'll cut off the questions now. And I'll just get everybody to thank Mary again in whichever way you can do that. I think you can put in the little clapping hands.
They're pros at the clapping hands.
Yes, I can see
Thank
the little
you, Mary.
coming up. And lots of thank yous in the chat.
Thank you so many of you for showing up and, you know, a Wednesday night, coming along and listening to me ramble on. I love it. Thank you so much.